Greetings and konnichiwa, and welcome back to the ToQger vlog series. Today we will discuss episode or station 3 of ToQger, and this is a Kagura centric episode. Basically, it's about the Pink Ranger, and this episode brings up a couple of different points that I want to go ahead and talk about. Overall, the plot is not all that interesting. It's kind of standard fare for the first few episodes, fleshing out some of the characters and the situation. Primarily the things that we learn from this episode is ToQger, they were expelled from their hometown simply because when the Shadow Line took it over, the power of their imagination was so strong that basically flung them out and made them perfect candidates for the ToQger. Specifically, green, yellow, blue, and pink all end up on the rainbow line, whereas right, of course, ended up at the shadow line, as you guys know from the first episode. But it's basically the idea that they arrived on the train, or on the rainbow line, and that was enough for them to be ToQger because they were expelled as being the greatest with the imagination. It's something of an explanation. I think the more we learn about the shadow line, the more we learn about the series, the more this will probably make sense to us, but at the moment, it's an explanation. It's not a very good one, because consider the fact that we have the Shadow Line going to multiple cities already, and you're telling me that all these cities, only these 5 people have enough imagination to save them. Particularly when it's children who have the most imagination. I am curious as to why there are no children that are being flung out. However, of course, that could be a later episode in which we find that there are other, quote, survivors, that the imagination was great enough in which they were able to survive. Heck, that might even be the explanation for ToQ 6. But as far as an explanation, we're learning little by little, and the greatest revelation in this episode, as far as plot's concerned, that the ToQger's home is by the ocean. Well, that only eliminates about 2% of the cities in Japan, so like the Pink Ranger said, it isn't much, but it is something, so at least it's going to be a coastal search and all that. They're not going to be very much inland when they're looking for their home. So that's about what we got major plot, but the main focus was on the Pink Ranger. It was her story, basically. The premise of this episode is that they have a choice to make. They can either stay on the Rainbow Line, be ToQgers to fight the Shadow Line, or they can leave to search for their home and search for their families, but they have to give up being ToQger in the process. Now, of course, the other Rangers, they're all for being ToQger, and Wright, the leader, of course, he steadfastly, as soon as he says he wants to look for his family, and he says he has to give up being a ToQger to do so, he pretty much says, screw that, I'm going to go ahead and be a ToQger. But Kagura, she, obviously because she's the girl and she's the Pink Ranger, she has to be the very emotional one, which it's a cliche, it's a little bit sexist and all that, but that's the role that she's given. She plays it very well. Her whole arc in this episode is that she wants to look for her family, she wants to find out more about her past, but of course as a ToQger she feels she can't go ahead and do that. So she leaves the Rainbow Line in order to start searching. Doesn't necessarily have a plan, actually, and really she gets off more by accident, more by mistake, which is kind of odd, because what this episode establishes is that the Rainbow Line will stop at every train station between here and, well, wherever it is they're going, basically. And like a normal train, you can get on and you can get off. And Kagura, she basically gets off, gets mesmerized by this poster and then these feelings and all that, and the door closes, and then she's trapped, basically, and that's how she gets herself involved with the Shadow plot. What's curious to me is that the Rainbow Line does not only stop, it opens the doors, even if it's the middle of the night and the Rangers are not going to go ahead and get off. So it functions like a normal train, but I don't see why it does that exactly. You think it would stop if it was necessary for its mission. So that's a little bit of a contrivance, I think, as far as the story goes, but it gets her off the train, basically. And throughout the rest of the episode, she's fighting a monster on her own. And the episode basically boils down to the same character trait she's had before. She lacks self-confidence, but she's able to gain that confidence mixed with her imagination to prove her self-worth. So at the end of the episode, while she, Wright, and the children are all trapped in the coffin, she uses her imagination to build her confidence, in which she's able to break from her chains and to break out of the coffin. And that's what this is about. Now, she obviously going to learn a lesson here, but it seems to me that it's not necessarily going to be permanent. In the first 3 episodes that we've had, she's had this self-confident doubt, used her imagination to be this Supergirl, basically, and from that, achieve her goal. But that's not permanent. It's something that will last a little bit, and then as we go forward, she'll have to relearn that lesson. There is a problem with that if she's got to gain her confidence in every episode. Again, my hope is by the end of the series, she won't have to do that. She's already that strong girl. But we are shown one of her character flaws in this episode that serves a multitude of purposes. Wright explains that she can get too carried away with her imagination and it can become dangerous. So when they were children, she was pretending to be a mermaid. And as she was pretending to be a mermaid, she and Wright almost drowned from it. Now, I like this for a number of reasons. One, Wright actually remembers something that is significant to his childhood that helps him remember the cities by the water. And it plays in with her character. Not only does he remember what happens, but we learn something more about her character. That the reason that she's probably not always confident is because she becomes too confident, she gets lost in her imagination and becomes dangerous. And I love that. I think that's a great idea. How they're going to go ahead and work with it, we'll see. But essentially, she could be the most powerful member of the team because she gets lost in her imagination, something the other Rangers have not exhibited yet. And most likely will not at this point. So I really like where they're going with that. It adds more to the Pink Ranger and really gives this impression that she's like a ticking time bomb. And that if they really need something, they're really in a jam, she could probably be the one to get them out of it by harnessing her imagination in healthy ways, but with an unhealthy result. So I love that there's a catch to it. And it's reasonable because everybody gets lost in their imaginations. And of course, if you get lost too much, it can cause you to do dangerous things and hurt yourself and hurt others. And I think that's great, what they're doing with her. So I really like that. I like the monster of the day in this episode, the whole monster made of chains. What's really creepy about him is when you watch the episode, he comes out pulling the coffin, singing this song. And it's really creepy. Even in Japanese, it sounds creepy. I don't know if it's a real song. Maybe somebody can tell me that. Or if they just made it up. But it's basically like, here's a coffin. You don't have to pay me. Just give me your soul. It's, give me the willies, basically. But I really liked him as a villain. There wasn't much to him. He's a generic stock villain. Except for the part where he plays the piano. I find that a little bit odd. Most monsters have a lot of quirks to them. This one I felt kind of odd. We do see the main villains of the series, albeit briefly. But there's one thing I want to comment on specifically, which obviously they're sowing the seeds for a deeper plot. Now, the main general, General Schwartz is his name. And he's basically planning everything while the other two are out doing whatever, summoning monsters. He's strategically planning to defeat the ToQger once he learns more about them. So he is the more dangerous threat right here. But there's a scene in which he drops a handkerchief and the big baby monster follows after him. Now, the whole scene right here is the baby monster, I think, is like falling in love with him. I'm not sure if it's male or female that this baby is. It doesn't really matter at this point, but that seems to be what they're setting up, is that there is like some sort of attraction here. But what I find most interesting is this General Schwartz, when he drops it, the baby tries to give it back, it's like, oh, thank you. No, I don't want that. Please, you keep it if you want and all that. General Schwartz is polite. And the thing bothers me about that is that villains who are polite are always the most dangerous. So something went off in my head when he was being very polite to one of his minions. Because we're used to seeing like the Ritas and the Lord Zeds, they're just yelling and screaming and hurting their minions, and they're not that dangerous when they do that, when they just go off and rant on them. But these villains, the villains are very subdued and quiet, and again, most of all, polite. Those are the ones that you have to watch out for. Those are the scariest ones. And this General Schwartz, I'm really concerned about him going down the line. He may turn out to be the primary antagonist and the most dangerous character out there. And I really hope that he is, because I think they're saying something good with him just by those few lines of dialogue that I was able to pick up on. So, really curious to see what they do from that. Other significant points for the episode I want to point out is that it seems that the Rainbow Line is powered by imagination. It's its basic fuel source, if you will. So in order to maintain, they have to be using their imagination. They have to maintain imagination, whatever that means exactly. Nevertheless, I guess it'll make sense. I'm not too thrilled about it. It was something I kind of glossed over, but I wanted to mention when I did these vlogs. But in any case, I think it's okay. We'll see what becomes of that down the line. And something I want to credit the producers on. This doesn't always happen in a lot of shows, but I just got to point it out because it's really great. When Kagura and Wright are talking in the Rainbow Line at the beginning of the episode about her leaving and things like that, when she remembers the conversation they have later in the episode, and it's done from a POV shot, her perspective. Too many times in shows when you have a conversation of two people and then one of the characters remembers it later, it's always done from the third camera shot, where it's like the sitcom, two people talking and so forth. This is one of the very few times that I can recall that somebody had a flashback to an event from their perspective, where we actually see what they were seeing as opposed to what the audience sees. And I have to credit whoever directed this episode, whoever edited it. That was a great choice. I thought that was good for them to go ahead and do, because I hate when they do flashbacks to things people could not possibly witness, or from a point of view in which only the audience would have and they wouldn't have that point of view. So, good Sentai production team. I applaud your efforts for that. That's something we don't see quite too often in any show, and I'm just glad that we went ahead and got that. I'm sorry, I dropped my notepad right here. Those are all the... one last thing I want to go ahead and bring up. Something that just kind of bothered me. So Kagura basically stumbles upon Wagon. Wagon's an eccentric type as it is, and I can't get a bearing on her personality or really what to think about her. But she seems to be the spoiled, childish kind of character. And we find her taking selfies of herself. And with that, she actually says selfie. It's like, oh, I'm doing that. I'm just taking a couple of selfies. Now, forgive me, but I always thought the selfie was kind of like almost an American thing, that we are so vain and full of ourselves. We have to take pictures of ourselves no matter where we are, including funerals and whatnot. But the fact that that is in Japanese culture just fascinates me. And the fact that there's actually a Japanese word for selfie out there is equally amusing. So I don't know. I just found that to be very interesting, very odd, more of a cultural thing more than anything from the episode. So there you go. I thought that was kind of odd. So, well, that's all I have for episode or station 3 here. Once I can get my hands on a subbed version of episode 4, I will go ahead and watch that, and I will do my vlog, and you guys can go ahead and enjoy it. Otherwise, I want to thank you guys for joining me this evening. Have a good night, and the tavern is now closed.